as they call it, and the subcontractor women and small and underutilized businesses. And here it, after Mr. King raised the question, we were concerned within the city about that, very concerned, particularly because this is on the heels of questions about the ballpark. And so in following this down, it is the Met Council that gets to control the contract, is the one that works with the affirmative action goals and does all that kind of the paperwork. I've been speaking with civil rights, and I know that several others within the council, as well as the mayor's office, have kind of raised this in our attention and talking with civil rights about what can be our role on this important project that's a visible project, that's a project bringing a lot of money to the state and the region and to Minneapolis. And one thing is that although we don't have the enforcement arm here, because we're not the one, as opposed to how the ballpark was managed, we don't have that direct enforcement role. But we can do things like notify the Met Council that we want to receive the participation reports. So this is a critical piece of information that we want to be able to ourselves track and track with the community about these participation goals and how are they being met. The second thing is how can we, I think, as a council, and right now we're sort of in the conversation phase of, we have seen this doesn't look right, is this contractor meeting the goals for the project? And then how can the council and the mayor reflect their concern to the Met Council about this is an important project, you may be the lead, but this is happening in Minneapolis. We take this seriously. We don't want a situation where we have lip service to some kind of goals on paper, but then the goals aren't met. And especially in these days where we are under such economic stress, when there's been a lot of attention about how can all of our communities participate in the federal stimulus. This is a little separate from this federal stimulus, but it's happening at the same time. And I see this as coming through on sort of what has been our public promise to the community that we are going to pay attention and follow through on these issues.
Well, Elizabeth, let me ask you then, who do you think or who do you say has the responsibility for monitoring and assuring that the goals are both articulated and met? And I raise that question because in preparing for today's show, I can tell you that my calls have met with a lot of buck passing. And I called over to the Metropolitan Council, and in a series of emails, they said that they have no monitoring or management or compliance responsibility. In fact, the person who responded to my email was Bonnie Kolodge, and her email to me was that the City Council has an agreement with the City of Minneapolis to do the monitoring and compliance for the DBE program on the Mark II project. She said to me that Wanda Kirkpatrick is the contact at the council but would not be available for the program today. And I sent this note as a follow-up to a conversation I had with the City of Minneapolis Civil Rights Department. And so the presumption was if the Met Council says the city has responsibility for monitoring and compliance, then I called the city. I called Michael Jordan, director of the Minneapolis Civil Rights Department. Over the course of several conversations and emails, Michael Jordan made it clear to me that the city of Minneapolis has no responsibility for monitoring or managing compliance with the DBE effort for the Mark II project. So that puts us in another land. The county says, or the Metro Council says it's not us. We've contracted, we have an agreement with the city. The person who has the authority at the city said specifically and in a written note to me, no, I have no responsibility here. It's not my job. So that means that nobody is paying attention. And Roosevelt, you and I are saying that as black men and as people of color who pay taxes, why is it that nobody is stepping up and taking responsibility for making sure the law is followed? The law is not being followed, it appears to us. We could be wrong, but from appearances, laws are being broken, and nobody is taking responsibility for it. Where should the responsibility be, council member?
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Al, because I'll tell you, that kind of buck passing absolutely makes me furious. And I can tell that it makes you furious as well.
Absolutely.
And, you know, because I wasn't part of that exchange, you know, all I can say to you right now is that I am going back and I'm finding out what's going on, because I'm getting a different story, you're getting a different story, and that's unacceptable. We have to have the same story, we have to have our public entities on the same page, and we need to understand who has the responsibility for the monitoring, for the enforcement, so that the rest of us, whether it's the city with that responsibility, whether it's the Met Council with that responsibility, that we are following through on what then is happening, and what are the response, what are the participation reports, all those different kinds of things. I'm sitting here myself with, I'm not going to read it, but an email, you know, that's kind of says a different thing.
Okay.
And so I'm not going to sit
go
here
ahead and share
and
it.
call out public employees that are staff members within the Met Council, but I just think that's, you know, it's me, I'm the elected official, I need to take the responsibility. I take that on. That's why people asked, why I asked people to elect me, because I want to take on the responsibility. So I don't appreciate that, and I thank you for, you know, alerting me. I mean, it's on air, so.
Sure, but I thank you for being here, and you know, you've been just gracious in your willingness to step up. And I think stepping up and taking responsibility is what this is all about, and so I want to commend you for that. But what should we do? What should businesses, what should trainers, job developers, people that want something to happen be doing to make sure it does happen? How do we do it? How do we make sure that the city actually does what it's supposed to do? The history is that the city has consistently, over a long period of time, failed. Roosevelt Gaines just said that, you know, the message being sent by the city, by the county, by the state, and others, even though there have been improvements, and we acknowledge and appreciate those improvements, the overall message, the overarching message has been that this is not important, and we'll get to it when we can. We'll make a good faith effort maybe, and if you end up losing out in a couple $100 million worth of income, suck it up. That's not a good message.
So maybe I don't, if I can, maybe I should turn to more generally about the
Yes.
city, and
Please.
we can go back if you want to the Mark II, because I'm not sure that I have the perfect answer on that sitting right here, right now.
Please.
But let me say a few things about what is happening within the city that I think are important, because I agree that there have been improvements, but it hasn't been enough. You know, just as an example, and sort of anecdotally, as a council member, I sit on some committees where you see these projects kind of come through for approval. Public, you know, street projects, development projects. I'm not on that committee, but you know, they come through for approval. And I have seen over, I'd say, the last year and a half, a change that was at least noticeable to me, with civil rights stepping up more to say, this bidder should not get this project, they have not met the test. Or in reviewing this project, we see a history that is unacceptable, and we have to either, you know, go to the next bidder or, you know, find a remedy for that. And that is something that wasn't happening before. That's a little bit anecdotal, but I just say that because it's something that was a change I noticed in projects coming forward for my approval that at least told me civil rights was watching in a way that I wasn't seeing before. A second thing that is on tap that I think goes towards how can the public have a better way to look at whether the city is meeting its goals and the transparency of that process, and being able to say you're doing a good job or you're not doing a good job. And that's with this database project that I know some people have been following, and it's been much too long in coming to fruition. But I have been told that in about 30 days, we are expecting this project to be online. It's a database program, and I think they're going to title it the Twin Cities Compliance Network. It will be something that is accessible